Hello, fellow BPA members. My name is Athena Frank, and it is my pleasure today to present some of the pointers and tips that I use to be prepared at our State Leadership Conference. So sorry I'm missing doing this in person at our boot camp, but it's more important that everyone was safe. So good to see you remotely. So let's go ahead and get started. So this is just a little bit about me. I'm just one of those seasoned teachers, which is why I was asked to be by Paxton to present this workshop for you. I've been around for about 29 years. I've had state and national winners, officers, chapter awards. I'm very honored, and I consider myself very blessed to be one of your 3 Oklahoma SEAC representatives at the national BPA level. And for 21 and 22, I was the BPA National Advisor of the Year. So let's look at some of those topics, okay? Things we're going to talk about today are forms. We're going to talk about some equipment, supplies, dress code, general tips, resources, and of course, we're going to definitely touch base on some of those really important days because we don't want to miss those, do we? So how do we navigate this enormous mountain of paperwork at State Leadership Conference? And as we know, it's not just a State Leadership Conference because, well, the paperwork starts months before, doesn't it? So one thing I'd like to share is my State Leadership Conference, or SLC for short. My binder is my friend. It just helps me be accountable. I know the first year that I started creating it, I still change it yearly. I still learn and reflect. And what's beautiful is I have a different notebook for fall conference, for state, and then for national. And so it's nice. I can just recycle out those papers every year. Maybe put a new cover page in and I'm ready to go. So this is kind of mine this year. Just share it with you really quickly. I know it's hard to see online, but I just really went in and put the new cover in, and I have my tabs and binders, and there's even some really important sticky notes in there. So not only do I find it's nice to have everything in one place, easy to grab, easy to access when I need it, but one of the things I'm going to say is that I've learned to definitely set soft deadlines. For example, if I want something in 2 weeks, I'm going to split that in half. If my hard deadline is 2 weeks, my soft deadline is going to be 1 week. Because as we know, Oklahoma, we have crazy weather. We also have COVID that's still there. The Rona is still alive. And so sometimes we may not see students for an entire week at a time. So again, I believe in soft deadlines. It just kind of takes out some of the crazy, some of the stress on both you and your students. And I also try to be very aware that when I send forms out that are going to require a parent's signatures, I'm going to try to send all of that paperwork in one packet. I'm going to staple that together because it is like pulling teeth to get parent forms back. I don't know about you guys, but I'm telling you, the struggle is real, at least on my end. So less is more. Package it all up, get all those signatures at one time, and maybe you'll get them all back signed at one time. I also do include an additional code of conduct bullet. Now, let me tell you what I do. I download the updated code of conduct from the Oklahoma BPA website, okay? Down at the very bottom, I just add an additional bullet. It basically says something like this. If for any reason, after the registration refund deadline for any activity has already been passed, if a student does not participate in the activity that the school has basically spent money on, the student is expected to reimburse the school for the entire cost of that activity. That does include or could include such items as hotel room, transportation, tickets like the OK Dodgers, any type of meals or restaurants or other type of activity. So anything that's been spent, if it's after the registration deadline, it's pretty clear that they should reimburse the school, which I think is only right. However, you may disagree. Do I have the teeth to enforce this policy? Good question. Honestly, I don't know. After all these years, I've never actually been pushed on it. I do have my administrator support. I did run this by them. I would definitely encourage you to do the same. Talk to your administration about it. But here's what I do really love, absolutely love about adding that additional bullet. I bold it, I put that baby in red, and it's right above the signature line for the student and right above where the parents sign. I do believe making it such a visible part of that code of conduct at least makes the parents and the students understand there's a financial obligation to some of these activities. Actually, state and nationals, particularly nationals, is a huge financial responsibility. Please be respectful of that. And if you don't intend to participate, if you don't intend to take it seriously, then simply don't sign up to attend. I think that's just a fair assumption. So that does help me. It's helped me out a lot. I've had students that actually went ahead and attended when maybe they might not have, because of that simple line, which sometimes I just have to remind them of that. So something you might consider. Definitely check with your administration before you do anything like that. If you have state officers, make sure that you, or officer candidates, which I hope you do, make sure that you keep anything related to that also in your packet. Any kind of agendas, any kind of emails from Paxton, of course, their entire officer packet, make a copy of that and make sure that that's with you. I also like to have any kind of school-related paperwork, and that's as much to make sure that I'm on track and I haven't forgotten something as anything. And I do like to use those checklists. So maybe you would like to also create a checklist, or here's an idea. Have one of your fabulous officers or students actually make this a project. Let them help create a checklist for you. All right, so after Paxton has released our schedules and we know what students are competing, when, where, locations, I actually do create a very detailed itinerary that I distribute to the students. I'm going to show you that on the next page. And I also, again, keep copies of all registration and payments. I think that's important. I haven't had as much trouble at state, but let me tell you, I've stood in that line at nationals to pick up my registration packet, only to be told I owed like $10 for a t-shirt. They sent me to another line that I had to stand in, only then to come back and have to stand in the original line with lots of other advisors for another hour, simply because of an $8 t-shirt. So I keep all payment emails. I put that in there too, just to verify. I could just pull that out and show it. I do include my statement of assurance, although if you were at fall, that's probably already okay. Never hurts to have it. All hotel confirmations, entertainment and meal receipts, emails, anything. If you're going to bowling or you're going to main event, keep documentation of that. And always, always, always pack some extra tax exempt forms. And you know, that's so great because I never cease to be amazed at the restaurants and places that will take them and save you and your students money if you simply ask. All my purchase orders, of course, my WASF guidelines, my rubrics, especially the events that my students are competing on. I will tell you, I'd like to add one little additional part here. Please make sure that your students know those guidelines, and there's a very specific line in them that states they cannot take past BPA tests into their competition. Those of us who were volunteering last year collected a substantial amount of past tests. Definitely use those past regional, state, and national tests to practice, but please have them pull those out before they walk into their competition. They could definitely risk the chance of being disqualified. We don't want that. Nobody wants that to happen. So please make sure your students know, study for those. Do not walk in to a competition with those on your person, on your body, okay? And then, of course, any maps, if you need restaurants or parking, make sure you share that with your bus drivers as well. So here's a sample of one of the itineraries that I've used. And, of course, I just did this in Excel. It was super easy to do. I have every day broken down. I have the time. I have what we're doing. I have who's involved. I have the location. And I have this additional column that says CT or Pro. I've identified what that legend means at the bottom. So basically, CT is our Central Tech or school dress code, and Pro is going to be BPA professional dress. When I'm with students at SLC, it's pretty much going to be one or the other, okay? No, clothing is not optional at any time. So again, they're either going to be in their Central Tech dress clothes, meeting our guidelines, or they're going to be dressed in professional dress. Okay, so the reason I added this additional column to the right, I don't know how many times I get asked, what's the dress code? And the other thing that I get asked a lot is, where are we meeting? When are we meeting? I'm at the back of the school. I'm supposed to be at the front of the school. I know that never happens with you, but I will tell you, it consistently still happens with me. I'm sorry about the loud noise. They are buffing our floors right as I speak. Okay. Other also, just make sure your students know, which I think is very helpful. This schedule lets them know where I am at all times. It also lets your bus drivers know, and it lets parents know if they happen to be picking them up or dropping off. In addition, it lets the students know where the rest of their chapter members are at any one time. So this is a pretty good deal. Even if they have free time, I hook my students up. I make sure they don't have a lot of free time. I want them doing something. I want to know where they are pretty much at all times. Keeps them out of trouble. You know what I'm saying? So this is also just some type of schedule. Now, I also would encourage you to find some way to quickly connect and share information and reminders with your students. So I use Remind. I've also used GroupMe. Some people use Slack. So in addition to printing this out and putting this into their bags, the other thing I do is I take a quick picture and include that on my Remind. So students always have a copy of this, and so do I, on their phones, which, as we know, are always attached to their bodies. The paper may get lost, but I'll guarantee you they can get to it digitally if they choose to. All right, looking at equipment and supplies. I'm also going to encourage my students, and I'm going to pack everything up. Again, back to that less is more. I'm going to pack everything, whether that's an individual event or if it's a team event. I'm going to try to pack it in one place. Maybe it's a bag, maybe it's a laptop bag, maybe it's a rolly cart, maybe it's as simple as a big manila envelope, you know, that we can get at Walmart, maybe something like this. Okay, but I'm going to try to pack everything they would possibly need. I'm going to get that information off of the WASF guidelines for their particular event. I love these 2x4 labels. Again, I have them at Walmart. They're, I think, 10 per page. And on that, I'm going to show you an example of things that I have on that. When I get to state, it's easy to just for them to grab their bags or grab their envelope, and it's up to them to make sure that everything that they need to have is actually in there. So we got to have some student accountability. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. So this could be like a sample, you know, an envelope, or whether that's a laptop bag or a rolly bag. And here's a sample of some of the ones I've actually used. You can see everything from big team events like the Parley Pro, which is up to 8 people, all the way to some individual events like banking and finance, which is a written test. I take the materials directly off of the WASF guidelines. My specs are going to be, is it an application? Does it have a prep time? Are there judges' questions? Who's involved? So I have their names. And then I highlight dates, times, locations. And so when your students get there, they should be checking in at least 15 minutes early to their events. As long as they've got their bag with their label, their name on it, they've checked everything before we depart for Tulsa. By golly, if we leave, we should get there with everything they need. If not, well, it's too late then, right? Also, side note, many events allow students to bring in published and unpublished printed resources. So make sure your students are aware of this. They are experts on those guidelines. So not pass BPA tests, as we've already talked about. However, if they can take in books. I know if you're using e-courses now, maybe you have to print some things out. You can print things, resources off the internet. You can even take handwritten notes, but you will not be able to use the internet for competitions once they get there. So resources are going to have to be published and unpublished, but they're going to have to be like that hard copy, that on paper type resource. Dress code, again, I pulled this right off of Oklahoma BPA's website. It has been updated a few years ago. Make sure your students know it. I also encourage you to pack a copy in their bags with them. At Nationals, we had an old school, I know I'm old school, but we had a really old school proctor that was volunteering her time, doing her due diligence, and she checked my students at the door, said they were not in dress code. They even pulled out their copy of the national updated dress code. And this proctor made them actually go to national headquarters and verify that it was okay. They had to write a note and send them back. And this team actually got 7th at nationals. So it's always good to have a copy. You can tell them, hey, this was updated, because some of our proctors may not be aware that it was updated actually a couple of years ago. I also encourage you to do a dress review, and I mean head to toe. I want to see shoes. I want to see socks. I want to see belt. I want to see tie. I want to see the whole thing. I approve it. I encourage you to do this if you can do it 2 weeks before state conference. That way it lets you know if you need to actually maybe put out some feelers, get some resources for students. You know, I'm not the only one that's been at Walmart at midnight before state buying shoes and socks for kiddos. I know. But you can also put out some emails to some of your friends and family and your fellow teachers, and sometimes they're really great about pitching in as well. You can also have your students, if you're concerned about them not getting there with all their clothing, you can also have them after they do the dress review in their head-to-toe competition materials or competition clothing. I'm sorry. You could even have them leave it at school, bag it up, head to toe, even put their shoes in the bag, and you're good to go. You know, that's something that's worked really well. And if you happen to be coming in on a bus with your kiddos on the competition day, I have them leave dressed to compete. I'm telling you, if they get in the van or get on the bus dressed to compete, and I mean head to toe, don't forget those shoes. Don't forget those shoes. If they get on completely ready to compete, they're probably going to get off the bus just to, an hour and a half later, ready to compete. Students that don't wear shoes inadvertently, I've had them lose one between here and Tulsa. No clue where that one shoe went, never found, but I've had to pull off my own shoes before. So again, have them head to toe review. Maybe even consider packing a couple of essentials. I'm usually packing a couple of extra ties with me. I've even got extra belt. I've got safety pins if I have to do a little extra creative editing, creative sewing on the day. And anything you can do to reduce the stress of competition day, would highly encourage you to do. General tips: start early, soft deadlines, leave early. They need to be checking in a minimum of 15 minutes in advance. So students are riding a bus for a long way. Make sure they get there. They can take a deep breath, maybe make a quick restroom run, find their competition room, and that they need to be checking in at least 15 minutes early. Okay. Just reduce stress on your students so they can really set them up for success. Make sure they practice with the equipment they're going to be competing with. I know this sounds like common sense, but I see it year after year where students will come in. One example is they'll open up a laptop and there will be a login screen with the password that they've never been provided. So make sure they're practicing with those laptops. If they're using a program such as Canva or some type of maybe even Office 365, I encourage you to have them download those programs onto those laptops so that they are not dependent on the internet. Do not depend on the internet. It is not provided. It is not guaranteed at State Leadership Conference nor at Nationals. So have it where they can just get to those presentations without internet as a resource. Have them practice in front of people. That's a great thing. Take them out of your room, take them to another classroom, make sure that they're taking their bags, those prepared bags or those prepared envelopes, because I'll tell you what, when they leave and go to a new place, that's going to be the clue really quickly if they have forgotten to pack something that they need to have to compete. Make them go to another room, set them up in front of other people, have them practice. Be flexible and patient. Make sure they understand the expectations and rules. Everybody's a volunteer, but if they do break the rules, sometimes there are consequences. So I do lay the law of the land down. And if I can't take students that I can trust, I probably need to leave them at home. Maybe they need to stay home if I can't actually trust them to make good choices or to ask me. How do I break down students? If I have students that want to do the same event, that's pretty easy for me. I look, of course, at eligibility. I look at attendance. I look at grades. If I have students that want to do the same event and they are eligible, I could have a runoff. I could give some past tests. I could see who's the highest score. I could also do a presentation in front of administrators or other volunteers, maybe some of our counselors, or if you're fortunate enough, industry professionals. And whoever scores the highest are the ones I let through. So again, I'm going to send my best forward. They are representing our school and our community, and I want the best to be successful. Some resources that I've got for you guys. So on the event guidelines, make sure you look at the index. I also put my sticky note of fame on such pages as 16 for the cloud storage. The 18 through 20, the events at a glance, which is that chart. Our state deadlines on pages 21 and 22. Pre-submission guidelines, 23 and 24, and the Oklahoma BPA competition, Lots of resources. Paxton's been great at this. Under the members tab, you can find all things relating to competition, including direct links to where you can purchase 3 years of state and national competitions, including answer keys and sometimes judges, sample judges questions right on this link. When I looked, I believe there were 3 state and national secondary and post-secondary tests for $40, and I believe the mid-level were $20. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that was the current pricing. All right, some other important dates, and they are coming soon. This is just a few days of maybe 3 days after we return from Thanksgiving, right, from the break. We have state officer applications due December the 1st. Our screening is the 15th. Those are both, the screening is at Stillwater at the state agency. Registration only runs for 2 weeks, so don't miss that, January 12th through the 27th. Online testing runs the February 1st through the 17th at 5 o'clock. All of the awards, scholarship, chapter awards, torch awards, quality chapter this year are all due on the same day, February the 10th. Pre-submission deadline, this is a big one, February 17th at 5 o'clock, the same day as our online testing ends. So that's an important date and time. Our mid-level state contests are at the state agency in Stillwater on February 23rd. And of course, our competitions for SLC, awards, and officer elections are March 6th through the 8th at the Tulsa Hyatt Regency. All right, now normally I would open this up for questions, but here's what I'm going to do instead. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. Here's my contact information. And of course, Paxton Caven, who is the ultimate authority and expert on all things Oklahoma BPA. Thank you so much for listening to me. I hope that the buffering out in the hallway doesn't interfere with this recording. And if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you so much, and good luck at SLC.